The follow-on offer of the Bharat-22 ETF is on now, and we have the man who, in a manner of speaking, manages this as well, to come in and speak about what you as an investor should expect from this tranche, and whether or not this would be the right product as well. Naren, the Chief Investment Officer at ICICI Prudential Asset Management, with us on the show. Naren, thanks so much for taking the time out and speaking to us. This is Neeraj here. Good morning. Naren, would you believe that from a timing perspective, this is the right time for an investor who's looking to invest his funds, irrespective of which fund he wants to invest in, to choose an ETF like the Bharat-22 ETF?
See, basically our thesis was very simple. We are positive on large caps against mid and small caps. And clearly Bharat-22, if you look at the index composition, is very much a large cap oriented ETF. The second is that we believe in a moderate return environment where the cheaper stocks have with good fundamentals have much bigger scope. And clearly, if you look at the Bharat-22 ETF, you will find a number of stocks which are cheap and which have decent fundamentals. The third is there is a 2.5% discount. So because you have a 2.5% discount, that gives you a certain benefit relative to any investing, because there is a margin of safety which starts off with a 2.5% discount. So the combination of the three made us really interested. From a second point of view, if you look at it, which are the sectors we like power. It is very well represented in this fund. We like corporate banks, which is very well represented in this fund. We like oil stocks because due to the subsidy reason, many of them have been derated, although there has been no subsidy on the upstream and downstream oil companies. So we have three sectors which we think are contrarian, cheap, and with decent long-term outlook from here. So, with that viewpoint, we think that Bharat-22 timing is reasonable, but we are not believers that markets can go 20% from here or something like that in the near term till election. That's and till US interest rates are coming down. That's our view.
Interesting. So, Naren, two questions that stem. I'm guessing you are bullish on this because you are also launching a fund of funds, I believe, which invests in the Bharat-22 ETF. So you're giving investors who don't necessarily have a demat account but want an exposure to this also an opportunity to do that.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly, because what we felt from our last issue was that people who don't have demat accounts couldn't invest. So we said that this way we can get people to invest, even people who don't have demat accounts.
Interesting. Yeah. So I understand that rationale. My question would be, Naren, more from not somebody who's managing the fund, but somebody who's looking at, what kind of investor should invest in such a fund. I take on board that it fits in with your investment psychology right now because of the sectors and because of the long-term, outlook that you have. People who have invested in the previous, the first tranche of the Bharat-22 ETF, the response or the returns have been underwhelming, to be honest. Somewhere that memory would be at the back of the mind of somebody who's making to either make a further investment or making a completely new investment out here.
See, in the first few months after the launch, the returns were pretty good. Now, what has happened is, particularly because people knew that a second tranche was coming, many of the stocks did get sold out, and due to that, the returns have turned moderate. But I believe it is more due to the launch of the second series rather than anything fundamentally wrong with any of these set of stocks. Because if you look at corporate banks, you'll find that some other corporate banks have been going up, whereas the corporate banks which are part of Bharat-22 have been going down. So I really don't worry about it, and I believe that this was an investment from a retail investor point of view. It was an investment for more than a year or so, and I think the fact that the second tranche has come quicker is better, because if we had a second tranche around the time of 1 year, that would have been a bigger problem. But so that's why I'm really not worried about the near-term underperformance of this of the ETF, because that was more due to the launch of the second series rather than any fundamental factor.
Okay, Naren. So I don't know, you probably can't divulge trade secrets, but I remember in the first tranche, ICICI Pru through various funds also invested, if I'm not wrong, in the ETF. You had taken some exposure as well. That has consequently, of course, come off as well. Would you look to do the same in this tranche as well at the ETF? Invest ICICI Pru's money into the ETF?
So I think clearly the anchor list has come out, so you will see that 3 of our large schemes have taken a position in this ETF as part of the anchor. But otherwise, I'm not at liberty to talk about what I will do in the main book. But what is in the anchor book is in the public domain, and you'll be able to see the anchor list from the stock exchanges. You'll get an idea of what we have done.
No, fair, which is why I thought I kind of foresaw that you will not be able to talk, but nevertheless took the chance. My last couple of questions, Naren. You kind of outline a broad investment thesis in your first answer, wherein you said that you don't expect the markets to really go gangbusters in the next 12 months. So investors should keep that at the back of the mind. But what key risk for the Bharat-22 ETF investor, aside of course, the market risk that exists, that you would like to point out?
See, I think the only risk that really worries me is that, oil going up substantially, and if there is, while the government has repeatedly stated through so many interviews that they will not do a subsidy. So I think on oil, like what happened in the pre-2014 period, that's about the only risk that I really worry about. I am a great believer that the corporate banking cycle of NPLs have played out. We are positive on many of the other sectors in the fund, like power, for example, where we think the outlook for the next 5 years does look good after this meaningful correction. So frankly, I would be worried about oil shooting up to 100 or something like that. That would be the biggest risk I worry about in the Bharat-22 ETF.
Okay, and my last question, Naren, to you. You kind of mentioned that there are some technical factors at play because of which the ETF has underperformed. And if you just look at from the time that the ETF launched till now, the Sensex, by and large, being flat too, has given slightly better returns than the ETF. Would you believe that because of maybe some technical factors or otherwise, this is actually a better time and opportune time to invest in an ETF like this? Or for somebody who is neutral and doesn't necessarily want to invest in an Bharat-22 ETF, but can invest in an index fund as well, like the ones that you may have, maybe that would be a better option. What would your thought be?
See, my view is I don't think if you invest in an index fund, you're going to get the 2.5% discount. And I believe that if you go individually into each of the components of the Bharat-22 ETF and look at the fundamentals, you'll find that actually this is one of the value launches at this point of time, because you have the underlying stocks which have corrected and then you have a 2.5% discount. And I think that combination makes it one of the best investment opportunities in the equity space at this point of time. And so I would say that clearly one can look at it from that viewpoint. Of course, if there is oil shooting up to 100 or something like that, I think it will have a negative impact on the ETF. But otherwise, I would say it has become a value proposition given the correction in the underlying constituents and the 2.5% discount.
Okay, great. Naren, I take on board the point that crude remains that big worry for you individually as well. You've mentioned it twice in this interaction already, but thank you so much for taking the time out, Naren, and speaking to us about the ETF, and all the best.
Thank you.
That's Naren, the Chief Investment Officer at ICICI Prudential Asset Management Company, speaking on the second tranche of the Bharat-22 ETF.